Hey ihr Lieben, ich wünsche euch einen wundervollen Tag. Mit dieser Podcast-Episode lassen wir eine wertvolle Tradition endlich wieder aufleben. In der letzten Zeit bin ja nur ich in meinem Podcast Human Future Movement zu Wort gekommen. Doch jetzt beginne ich wieder Gäste einzuladen, worauf ich mich sehr freue. Heute darf ich euch eine bemerkenswerte Frau vorstellen. In meinem Buch Genesis bin ich ja darauf eingegangen, wie sich Patriarchat und die patriarchalen monotheistischen Religionen gegenseitig perfekt ergänzt haben und in Spiritualität und Religion weibliche Prinzipien regelrecht ausgemerzt bzw. unterdrückt haben. Deswegen freue ich mich immer, wenn mir Frauen begegnen, die es geschafft haben, auf eine freche, kühne, leidenschaftliche Art und Weise die Wurzeln dieser wertvollen Religion wieder mit weiblichen Prinzipien zu beleben. Und heute darf ich euch eine jüdische Rabbinerin vorstellen, Tirzah Firestone, was für ein wundervoller Name. Sie kommt aus Amerika und ich weiß nicht, wie es dir geht, aber gerade in dieser wilden Zeit, in der die USA so verrückte Kapriolen schlagen, finde ich es sehr, sehr heilsam, mit vernünftigen, tiefgründigen Stimmen aus den USA zu sprechen. Freu dich auf eine starke Frau, freu dich auf eine tiefe Unterhaltung über Liebe, über Wahrheit und über die Essenz von Religion. Ich danke dir fürs Zuschauen bzw. Zuhören. Der Podcast ist in Englisch gehalten. Wenn du die Untertitel sehen willst, geh bitte auf YouTube bzw. auf Spotify. Und wie immer, ich freue mich auf eure Kommentare. Hinterlasst mir sehr gern ein Feedback, wie es für euch gewesen ist. Und natürlich freue ich mich auch, wenn ihr den Kanal abonniert. Und jetzt Vorhang auf für Tirzah Firestone.
Dear Tirzah, it's a very, very happy to get to know you. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet me.
And thank you, Veit.
Yes, and all our beautiful people here in Germany. And dear Tirzah, as a beginning, I would like to ask you, how would you introduce yourself as a human being? What is the most important thing to know about you?
Wow, you're diving right into the deep end.
Totally, I like it.
I'm a seeker. I'm a student of mysticism, of depth psychology, but mostly I'm a spiritual seeker. I always have been since I was young, and I still am. And I'm also an ordained rabbi, so I use the symbology, the tradition as a lens to read what you might call the Torah of the moment, what's happening in the world, what's unfolding for us now, which is all about humanity and old patterns that are repeating themselves. It's a fascinating time right now, so I feel like I'm in the river of humanity now, trying to understand how best to navigate these times.
Of course, I will ask you a lot of questions about this very, very special times.
Yeah.
And I must say, it's a second joy for me to speak with you because I'm a German. So, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we Germans have a lot, very deep connections to Jewish people, and we can learn a lot together. Yeah. But first, I would like to ask you, how have you become a rabbi? Because I have to admit, until I have prepared for this podcast, I didn't know that also women can become rabbis.
Yes, women can become rabbis. Since 1972, the liberal denominations, the liberal parts of Judaism have said absolutely. Still, just like the Catholic Church, the Orthodox sector is still very off-putting. I come from a very Orthodox background. My family always laughed that I became a rabbi. They never understood or they never accepted that. So that is still a bit of a problem. that the Orthodox part of the continuum of all the major religions are still very much the same. They're still holding off. It's only men. It's only patriarchal. But since 1972, women have become rabbis, and I think have transformed the landscape of Judaism to make it more empathic, more ritual rich, bringing in all kinds of embodiment, music, dance, feeling, also reaching into parts of the population that the half of the population who go through life cycles that are really important, like birth and coming into womanhood and bringing in girls and with rich tradition and ceremony. That's all. The men kind of missed all that, and the women are bringing it back.
Yeah, I understand. I'm very happy about this because without this religion, it's a little bit dry, I would say.
Exactly.
So can you remember the exact time when you had this idea or this call? Okay, now I want to be a rabbi.
Well, I have a very strange and circuitous journey because I hated my religion for many years. I mean, I left Judaism. It was so patriarchal and top down and very stultifying, very suffocating. And I left as a teenager and went to travel around the world and study other things and became involved in all kinds of cults, and it was real. I got pretty far out as a young person. And then, but I felt that I was in exile because I couldn't, I married a Christian person who was actually a Christian minister. My family divorced me. They sat Shiva. They disowned me. And, but it was paradoxically through his faith. He was a very devout person. And I started to long for what is the real thing here behind Judaism? And he helped me understand that there is a very different kind of Judaism that's more joyous, and it's not about the victim history, but more about the rich mysticism of Kabbalah. Anyway, long story short, I came back to Judaism through another door altogether and realized that there are so many people who are hungry, really starved for direct spiritual experience, for really connecting with spirit, and forget about all the bullshit of the rules and regulations and all of the things that the leaders of religion might tell you. How does the ancient tradition help us connect back to the living God, the living spirit, the moment, the immediacy of the moment? So that's what I became delighted in again and returned, and had an incredible teacher, Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, who came from Belgium, came from Austria and Belgium, and he reignited for a whole movement called the Jewish Renewal Movement to renew Judaism, and sort of that same spirit of mysticism and egalitarian Judaism. Very importantly, it's welcoming the feminine principle back in.
It's so beautiful to hear. Yes. So now I have a very simple question. What or who is God for you?
Right.
Yes. I want to use the time with you.
It's a marvelous question. I mean, there's no words, of course. It has to be experience, and any words that I could possibly say would be a lie. Yeah. It's a feeling. It's a living. It's a river of transformative possibility. It's always going farther than oneself. It's that urge to grow and to heal and to transcend. it's certainly not something that's understood very much in the harsh masculine politics of the day. It has much more to do with the human impulse to love and to connect, to constantly break boundaries and connect with each other and do amazing things. It's spontaneous. It's a very spontaneous, evolving, moving, dynamic impulse that lives inside all of us. And it can't be bottled. It can't be named. It can't be marketed, although it certainly religions have tried to for centuries, right? It's been very much misunderstood. But I think it's that impulse that shows up in one's dreams. I'm also a Jungian. I love the Jungian depth psychology that talks about that deep impulse that sends us dreams and impulses like intuition and synchronicities and the guidance that we get, the impulses that we get that are that guide us to become who we're meant to become. The idea that nobody on the planet, not of the 8 billion people, are here by accident. And we're all here with a purpose. We're all here with a piece of the puzzle. And that has to do with developing ourselves fully and becoming who we're meant to become, following the course, if we're lucky enough. Certainly, many children are born into war and famine and hardship, and so they can't develop themselves fully. But we have been so lucky. I feel like the last 80 years, we have been so profoundly lucky to and fortunate, graced to have the relative freedom to and peace, relative peace, to develop ourselves and evolve to become who we're meant to become. And now things are changing, aren't they?
Yes, and of course, I have to ask you, how do you feel about this change right now?
Yeah, well, I don't know if your listeners are listening now. It's a profound time on planet Earth, a cascade of crises, and a throwback. You could say it's a regressive time, if you know what I mean by that, that there's like a pull, like an undertow in the ocean that pulls you down or pulls you back into the past, into past patterns, and a hyper-nationalist tribal mentality that grabs and very coercive. It's very, very... Here in the United States, I'm speaking to you from the Rocky Mountains, where we're having a beautiful spring is breaking forth, but there's definitely a lot of fear in the land of this kind of, almost afraid to say, a return of a fascist impulse, taking out words out of our language that we can't use, firing many, many people, thousands and thousands of people losing their jobs, a kind of dismantling of the structure, the administrative structure of how democracy works, research and science, medical research all being cut. It's an absolutely shocking time.
So how do you make sense out of this for you personally?
Yeah, how do we make sense of it? It's really, I think we're all staggering a bit. We're all tripping over ourselves trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
There are these... My work is about the power of unprocessed trauma that pulls us back into old patterns. But I think it's not only trauma here, it's also the power of ignorance, the power of greed is very strong as well. Just the, if you look at it in the big cycles of hundreds and thousands of years, the the death of empires, the grab of the grabbing of empires for power, for territory, but also the power of the patriarchal forces, of male forces, masculine forces, and white supremacy. Those that believe that there are superior races or superior, and that all of that has been reignited. One more chance, one more try, even though we've been through so much hell already on this planet. We know so well that doesn't work. I was in Berlin not long ago, and on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, and I was so touched by your people. I was, my mother is German, by the way. I'll just say that. She escaped Hitler's regime in 1939 very narrowly as a teenager. And my father was also very influenced by Germany because he was in the U.S. Army, serving at the liberation of one of the death camps in 1945. So both of them were very traumatized people. They never wanted to go back to Germany. They just was like very, verboten, so to speak, to speak German or to buy anything German. That was very strong in my household. As I said, they were very Orthodox. But I loved being there. I loved being back. I felt a deep healing impulse. I felt the goodness of the people wanting to heal, that this history is alive in the air, very much alive in the air, and the deep desire, very moving to me, the deep desire to heal these intergenerational patterns. So many people came up to me, so many people spoke when I was giving lectures or speaking, asking questions about how to heal their grandparents' generation that was inside them, they were carrying the Nazi past, the criminal past, this echo, the kind of reverberation and echo of German's history. And I was very, very moved by it, this desire to heal.
So I guess you have spoken to a special audience.
I think I did.
I mean, if you, for sure, you have recognized the results of our last election.
Yes.
So
I did, although I must say, when I was in Berlin, there were huge demonstrations that were saying, no, we're not going back. I think 160,000 people in Munich, 260,000 people. I was moved by that. There is a tension, just as there is in this country. There's an unfortunate split. There's such a big divide in the people. Some people who are more prophetic. They see what's happening. They understand these very familiar patterns that are re-encroaching. And in the United States, I'd have to say we're a lot more naive. People are very naive. They don't understand what it looks like, these fascist tendencies. They seem to not understand. One person or a group of very wealthy, powerful men, white men who are enforcing top-down power, not with the people, not for the people, but like from the top. They don't quite understand it yet, but soon they will understand.
Yeah. I very often in these times think it's already very hard for me as a white man to feel all this, but I cannot imagine what it means for a woman, especially also a woman like you who is engaged very much socially, also for feminism. So how do you feel personally if you see how these old white male guys just roll it back in some weeks.
Yeah, it's shocking. I mean, there's, I think among the people that I associate with, there's absolutely no going back. There is absolutely no going back. However, for people in more rural areas, more out in the country, who don't have facility, who don't have help, who don't have much resources or money, it's very hard to, God forbid, to be raped or assaulted and become pregnant, for instance, when you're very young, and not be able to get an abortion. That is a curse. That is an absolute curse. And no, our bodies do not belong to men, but they are acting like this. It really is a throwback. It's such a regression to archaic times.
Yeah.
So it's for women who are tuned in, who have resources, there is help. We're helping each other, almost like an underground railroad that helps women come to states, for instance, where you can get an abortion, where you can get reproductive help, where you don't become the victim of this system. But many women don't know about it or can't plug into it, and that becomes really a nightmare for them.
Yeah. I have the feeling that here in Germany, a lot of people are just right now so deeply irritated that they really have lost faith, It's like we have worked so much for this and now it's rolling back. So can you give this people an advice? How is it possible to find to keep faith in this troubled time?
Yeah, to keep faith and to, I would add, to not go into just fear. Fear is really the enemy, because when we go into fear, it's like a paralyzing experience. We lose our power, right? We lose our power to change things, and we lose our joy. So we lose our sense of humor. We lose our ability. The whole test right now, I think, is to keep connecting with other people. That's why you're so important, Veit. Podcasts are important, and books are important, and news journalism is important, and connecting across lines to build coalitions and say, no. I'm Jewish, but I'm connected to the mosque here in town. The imam and I work together to break through and say, no, that's really the biggest tool of this new movement, this new force, is to keep people paralyzed and to keep people in fear. But if we can break through and keep saying, no, we have absolute power. We are so powerful. Just watch. And to keep talking, to keep, not to move into isolation, but to feel that we can do anything. The people have the power. One of the big images that many of us, well, I certainly do, carry is the fall of the Berlin Wall in Germany. Yeah. And that very unexpected movement where people pour over. That is sort of, images are very, very important. Historical images. That's one that's very, very important to remember. Nobody expected that. In a sense, it was an administrative mistake. Right? It's like someone said something and it just like the people were ready. And I think that is going to happen again. There will be these moments. Same thing I think about South Africa when Nelson Mandela came out of 26 years, or I think it was 24 years of prison. And the way he moved, the way he chose, he had free choice and he chose something so unexpected and the people roared in response. So I think we have to keep faith in these incredible moments that humanity has the power not to go numb, not to go into lockstep, but into united resistance, and that's exciting.
You're also very deep into C.G. Jung, and I'm very interested. What do you think? How or what is the current situation or the current development telling us, the good people, about our shadow?
Very good. Right.
I must say, I had already a lot of shadow work to do with Donald Trump in his first time.
Yeah.
So he's one of my most important shadow teachers. But
yes, exactly. He is this. He is such a he's almost he's in a sense a cartoon figure. He's a caricature of what we carry inside of us. Otherwise, he couldn't rise to power. Yeah. And this is a chance for all of us to look at this shadow material of greed, of materialism, wanting to be rich and richer rather than cultivating or, feeling empathy. He's really the opposite of that tendency in all of us to feel for another person, to put oneself in another person's shoes. There is no capacity there, none. And I think that's the psychology of the psychopath is the inability. There's no conscience and there's no ability. I think it's actually it's like a deck of cards that's missing a couple of cards, right? I may be thrown in jail for this, actually, for saying these things, but they're missing cards. Elon Musk.
Isn't it crazy that this is not only a joke that you just made?
I know. It's not only a joke. Although I must say the comedians are keeping us alive here in the United States. Thank God for Saturday Night Live and for the the great political comedians right now. But no, there is some incapacity. There's like missing gene for feeling what millions of people will feel when the children won't get lunches at school. Like, what? Because you want to cut taxes for wealthy people. No. It's absolutely insane. But I think what you're saying is so important, Veit, which is that we all have that inside of us. Otherwise, it couldn't be appearing in the outside world, right? We have that, all of us, that cruelty. We all have cruelty inside of us. And whether we're Jews or Christians or Americans, Germans, we all have that tendency inside of us. And now we are up against the wall to, so to speak, to decide, are we going to choose that tendency? Are we going to choose our cruelty? Or are we going to break through and choose the heart, choose compassion for one another and feeling for one another? I think you're saying something so wise. Donald Trump lives inside of us, each one of us. The Nazi tendency lives inside of all of us. And we have to choose now.
So let's speak a little bit about intergenerational trauma. I guess a lot of people are aware about their own personal trauma, for example, for their childhood. So could you please explain what is intergenerational trauma and how does it affect us?
Yeah, so the reason why you're even asking that question is because of scientific research that has broken through in the last 15 years, I would say, roughly, starting in about, especially around 2014, 2015, there were amazing studies starting in the animal clinics, looking at how, and I'll just tell one piece of research that happened with mice. And this is how, in a sense, it started to tip our thinking into what is now popular thinking. But in the clinics, they saw that the mice that were given, for instance, a certain smell sweet smell of cherry blossoms. It was a chemical. And then given electrical shock, putting them together. And in true Pavlovian style, the mice, every time they smelled that smell, they would freak out because they knew that what would follow would be an electric shock to their paw, to their foot. Even when there was no shock, smelling that smell would be okay. So would freak them out. Now, then these mice were bred, and the third generation, the grandchildren, the grandpups of those mice who never met their grandparents, were born and given that smell, and they freaked out. How is that even possible? So that they started to, this sort of research, I'm telling it in very, very simple terms, this sort of research started to, maybe that's true for humans as well. And of course, with humans, it's much more complex. But they started doing research on the Dutch hunger winter, when the Nazi embargo created months of starvation. People were eating tulip bulbs. People were falling down dead on the street from starvation. And they knew that the women who were pregnant during those months of the Dutch hunger winter would have embryos that would be suffering. They didn't understand was that there would be psychiatric implications, not only for the children of that winter, but also the grandchildren would have a tendency for all kinds of medical and psychiatric problems. All of this research started to then doing research on the descendants of Holocaust survivors and how the grandchildren, the second and third generations, were more prone to raise cortisol levels and to have a proclivity, a tendency to be much more prone to PTSD when put in stress than other children of the same of Jewish demography, but who hadn't been through the Holocaust. So all kinds of research from animal behavior into long generational human behavior and psychiatric results. And that research has come into the popular understanding now that we are deeply affected by unprocessed trauma that is in our ancestors. Not that it changes our genetic structure, of course, but that it changes the gene expression so that our IQ, our tendency to get sick, our tendency to be stressed, patterns can come down into next generations and do. So it's something that many of us have intuited for a long time that, oh yeah, just like my grandparents freak out. But in my research, there is such an interesting stories that I've seen researching second and third generation children who didn't even know what was going on with their grandparents. For instance, a little boy I met, a 10-year-old child, had no clue about his grandparents from Ukraine who had starved in a man-made famine. And nobody told him, he didn't know anything, but he would never leave the house without packing his backpack full of food. His pockets would be filled with food. He wouldn't go out of the house without having snacks and treats. And he would always have, he was like, what is that? But his parents were scratching their head like, this is insane. It's as if he had come out of a war zone. Wow. And where did that come from? That's just a tiny example of young people in their 20s and 30s who are imprinted with the dreams of their grandparents without knowing what their grandparents' stories are, or imprinted with the anxiety and the words that their grandparents said without. I have all kinds of very uncanny stories in my research that show these things that we carry unmetabolized dramatic effects of trauma. And of course, people who are fleeing war, or they're displaced, or they're in crisis situations, they're not going to therapy. They don't have the time and the bandwidth to process their trauma. So that they live with it, and it comes down into their children, and it comes down into their grandchildren. I'm happy to tell you any story about these things. This has become a fascinating part of my work.
I'm very interested to speak with you about how does this probably affect, for example, my generation in Germany. Yes, because, you know, we have a lot of people in Germany which are saying, okay, please, let's go over history. Let's just forget it, you know? It was not me. So, yeah. I mean, this is for me the only way how I can explain why one of 5 people in Germany are willing to choose a party who really say this kind of history doesn't matter anymore. So what can we learn right now as Germans from this, and how we can recognize these patterns of this trauma inside of us? For example, my grandpa, I have never spoken with him because he lived in West Germany and I was growing up in East Germany.
Oh.
So he was at the SS. So, and I know that he felt later on very, very guilty. So we don't know what he has done, but he felt very guilty. And I know that when I started to go my own path, I recognized I have a very, very, very deep guilt inside of me, and I never could explain it.
Yes.
So
I understand that so deeply. I met people and heard stories when I was in Berlin last month that were astonishing, the profound guilt. But look, these things are also, you're a sensitive being, and those feelings are very uncomfortable, right? And they hurt the heart. They're very, produce a lot of uncomfortable feelings, for lack of a better word, self-image, for lack of a better word. And many people don't have the ability to hold tension with discomfort. They don't want to feel discomfort. And so they just want to feel strong and powerful and let me at them and fuck it all. Just this sense of don't tell me. Yeah. I'm not going to feel uncomfortable. But what it takes right now to live in this world is profound discomfort, to feel the suffering that's going on right now, the suffering that our countries are causing, that our votes are causing, that the people right next door are feeling. It's a very difficult. It's not what Jung would say is to hold tension with that, with the opposites inside of us. This kind of stress that we feel, we don't have to solve the problem, but we do have to feel it and trust that. Like in the ancient art of alchemy, that when you can hold things together in one cauldron and one cooking pot and let it cook, it's going to create a third thing. Wow. But if you can't tolerate discomfort, and you can't tolerate the tension of that guilt, for instance, that you hold inside you, or the sense that you're such a good person, and yet your grandfather might have done horrible things. That's powerful, just to hold those two together, goodness and evil together. But many people can't hold that, and so they flip into all good. I'm just only good. I'm only good. No, actually, we all have cruelty that lives inside of us. The power, the potential for cruelty and darkness, or I'm all bad and I'm gothic and I'm just black and actually you have a beautiful heart inside you too. So it's holding, we're all these things. We have many beings inside our breast, and we have to hold all of that. But alas, it's not, some people can't do that. That's how I see it. And I really, I heard such amazing stories from Germans. I will just say that one of the first people that I met when I was in Berlin was a woman who comes from the south of, named Alexandra Sent, was the first person, I believe, in 2007 to break the silence and write about her grandfather, who was an SS, a Third Reich official who was in the Czech Republic, and he was under him. Thousands and thousands of people died. Meeting her, and she wrote a book about it, about breaking that silence. And meeting her was so powerful because that's where all my relatives died. Much of my mother's family lived in exactly those towns, and meeting her was such a karmic moment. As your grandfather was in charge of murdering my people, and yet here she was sitting with me over tea and talking about her commitment to running groups. She runs groups for Germans with Nazi ancestry who are struggling or doing this. This is a sacred wrestling. This is God wrestling. I call it God wrestling. Or to wrestle those things in that we carry, these patterns and these histories. She helps people do that. Anyway, we're all in this cooking pot together, I think.
Yeah. So I assume we are speaking here in my podcast to a quite open community who's willing to co-create in this evolutionary process. So what kind of advices you can give somebody who says, okay, I understand that I have to be able to bear this kind of discomfort. Yeah. I want to be part of the collective healing. What can I do?
It's so wise, this question. First of all, there are two things I would say. One is working on myself, that I don't fall into fear and isolation, that I don't fall into shame or a sense of paralysis because I feel so weak or so bad. Working on myself, that I do things that I love to do every day, whether it's swimming or dancing or doing yoga, being in nature, art, sports, whatever it is that keep me alive, that keep my nervous system alive, because this is a time when our nervous system either shuts down or gets, during traumatic times, our nervous system can become shut down flat, or it can become hyperactive, and a lot of stress hormones running through us, and then we get into some bad stuff. We get very irritable or angry so working on ourselves so that we stay smiling and breathing. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is just to keep connecting with each other. Connect with your friends, call family, break out of isolation, because we're very powerless when we are in isolation. We're not meant to be in isolation. We're meant to connect. That's why your work is sacred work, to have these broadcasts that reach people and touch people, and remind people who they are and what's going on. These are big forces that are drawing us back in history, pulling us back regressively, and very important that we keep evolving forward. And we can only do that together.
Yes. I would like to speak about one more hot topic, about Israel and Palestine. So,
yeah.
I mean, I see that a lot of my German buddies have difficulties to differentiate between the people who are doing this and the Jewish people.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to understand there is a difference.
Yes.
But first of all, you as a Jewish woman, how do you explain that a people who has suffered by themselves so much can do this?
Right. This is in the last few minutes of our time together, this is perhaps the most painful time of my life because of just what you're saying. Because even here in the United States and all through Europe, I think, and certainly, around the world, there is a conflation of Judaism and Jews with Israel and Israeli policy. I've been a human rights advocate and human rights worker for years and years, far before October 7th. And so I have only, in my last book, Wounds into Wisdom, is all about this, that the power of unprocessed trauma is so strong, it can, in a sense, flip upon itself when we don't do the work of grieving, when we don't do the work of profound victimhood, history of victimhood. It can be so strong that it can flip into its opposite. And I do see this, I do see Israeli policies and the blindness that we talked about before, the inability to feel for the other, the inability to have empathy for suffering children. I do see that as a trauma residue. I see that as the unhealed history, unhealed historical trauma. So I understand it too, but it hurts my heart so deeply. It breaks my heart. So there have been, atrocities that have been committed against my people, and now my people are committing atrocities. And that is the biggest tragedy in my life. I am so sad that we haven't been able to transcend, to see from here, from above, at a meta level, that history will continue to repeat itself. This chain of suffering will never end unless we make that choice. We jump out and see, it will continue to keep flip-flopping like this. So it's a profoundly sad time for me. It's a time of heartbreak for that reason. And I know that as you started this podcast, Veit, you said something so powerful, that our people, my people and your people, are karmically connected.
Absolutely.
There's some amazing, crazy karma between us.
Yeah.
And it just breaks my heart open to think about the kind of cruelty that we have to live through to be friends and to stop repeating history.
Yeah, I can feel you. There's a question which I hear quite often from people who are seeking answer of the question: is there a God? Is there a kind of sacred order behind this, or is it just chaos? Yeah. And the question is, okay, if there really would be a kind of loving source of all, how is it possible that all this is possible? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
How do you answer this for yourself?
I feel it's a feeling, but I think I'm going to tell a story. It's a very macabre story. It's a dark story, but I'm going to tell it. It's a story that Elie Wiesel told from the camps, from Buchenwald, I believe it was, that there were some men who were in the camp and they were watching a young boy be hung by the Nazis. And he was killed in front of their eyes, and he was hanging there. And the suffering was just unstoppable, unimaginable. And one of them said, "See, where is God? Where is God?" there is no God. And another one said, no, God is right there hanging in front of our eyes. You know, I don't think there is any difference. I think God is right here in this struggle that we're having. I think God is right here in this choice that we have to keep making for love. I think God is giving us this chance again and again on the theater of our lives to choose the heart, to choose empathy, evolution. God is evolution, we could say. God is this power to transform ourselves, and we keep getting chances, opportunities to choose getting it, breaking through, understanding that we are each other, that we are, that we can build a different kind of world. And I think God is suffering deeply right now. I see God also as in the feminine form, as the great mother. I see God as really hurting when her children are suffering. She's crying. She cries with us, not against us, but with us. So yeah, I do feel she is really, I do feel her presence so strongly, and I feel her in people like you, Veit. And in this impulse to do the God wrestling, to break across barriers and connect. That's God.
You know, I thank you very much that you answer not from a just high spiritual level. I really can feel you as a human being, and it gives me joy and trust in these crazy times to know people like you. And I would like to give the last word to you. So is there anything what you would like to share with your German brothers and sisters?
I love you. I feel like I have just made a big breakthrough in my life to go back to Germany and feel the heart of the good people, also the heart of danger that's available right now and rippling right now also. It's a moment that we share. It's a moment of history that's a time of choice. And I love the ability to break through and to keep building bridges. And so wherever you can do that, let your heart break through and to touch somebody else. That's the work right now.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Veit.
Yes, and I hope I get the chance to get to know you better.
Likewise.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.